Ugh. Well, this is great. Who would have thought it'd be so hard to get footage from an arcade when I gotta lock the doors? I mean, it's for the best that people stay home. I just... You know, there's gotta be something around here to do. Come on, I know I've still got one copy in here. Oh yeah, there it is. I knew it, I still had one. Yeah, the old Smash Brothers. I loved this thing. Just put that in there, and there we go. Yeah, I remember this game. This game was so dope. I used to play this thing all the time. Down through. Oh, wait, up air? Yeah, I've still got this. Let's go. Stomp, up smash. Goodbye. Well, there's an update needed for the update. Update? How is there an up? What do you mean? Fine, just get it over with. Just why?
6 hours later.
Well, kids, this is why you go to the arcade.
Complete!
Smash 64 Remix. Probably the coolest thing to happen to Smash since Sakurai actually chose to make a Smash Brothers game. Okay, but really. Smash Remix is an absolutely exceptional ROM hack, essentially being a straight upgrade to the base game for competitive purposes, kinda like 20XX for Melee. Now listen, I know what you're thinking.
But GD, if you want to play a really competitive old Smash, then just play Melee.
And you're not wrong. Melee is a fine Smash Brothers game, but I just like 64 so much more.
No, I like it. This is brilliant, but I like this.
For lots of reasons. For one, I love the blocky, low-poly models of all the characters. It's just got this super early game charm to it that just makes it fun to look at. And Smash 64's art style leans just slightly more into that cutesy fun factor than Melee does, or any other Smash for that matter. See, Smash was originally going to be based around the idea of Nintendo figures coming to life and duking it out, or... I don't know if this game's really about toys anymore, is it? Is it still about it doesn't really look like toys anymore. More so being played with, and all the elaborate flips and tricks you're seeing in the game is just someone's imagination. Where in reality, the person playing with them is kind of more like... And secondly, these hitboxes are outrageous. Look at this. Look at this. Look at this. Look at this. Look at this.
Well, actually, maybe don't look at that one. Don't worry about that one.
Look at this.
And look, it might not seem that bad, I get it, but what you don't realize is that my entire being is a foot.
Show me your moves. Yes! Come on!
Also, I've seen Melee's hitboxes, but 64's last for like 8 years, so you're legally not allowed to at me about this. These look really doofy to some people, and trust me, I know, they are. But they're also very literal. If Ness's animation has his head inflate and snap his neck just to hit you, it kind of makes sense that the hurt box is kind of enormous. If you're playing against a Falcon, it's easy to recognize that their down air is a wall of danger. So there's no guessing whether or not it's going to spike. It just will. The animation points down. If you touch it, you're gonna go down. I'm looking at you, Ultimate. What the f is this, Ultimate? In what way does this animation indicate that it's gonna launch to the side? What does this mean? What does this mean? Lastly, the combos. As in real combos in a Smash game.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Now hear me out, hang on. Let me explain. Smash 64 is kind of well known for being a haven for zero to death combos, which from the perspective of someone that plays a lot of quote unquote traditional fighting games, I want that high score. Is honestly really cool. It retains that improv-heavy combo structure that Smash is known for, but it's also extremely validating and rewarding to pull off, since it requires the use of character knowledge, experience, stage control, movement skill, and hear me out. Really, when I talk about the combo structure in 64 being different or just being my preference, what I'm really talking about is reducing the number of asterisks in a combo. In a more traditional fighting game, I know that if I'm at the correct distance and my first hit lands, so long as I time the rest of my buttons right, I know I'm gonna land this combo. There's nothing that my opponent can do about it since I got that first hit. It's the same way in 64. If I get that first hit, I'm pretty darn confident I'm gonna get a follow-up after it.
Okay, yeah, woohoo, you memorized a combo in a fighting game, right? Stay with me on this. If we're just gonna ignore the fact that Smash has a more improvisational combo system, the real question is, what exactly is it in 64's combo structure that makes it so similar to other more traditional fighting games? Technically, it's a couple things, but the answer is so simple. More hit stun. Or, well, you know, it's hit stun, and proper pacing, and proper risk reward.
Did you notice? You can't be hit at this moment. Or hit at this moment.
Let's just go ahead and start from the top. Hit stun being how long the damaged character isn't allowed to move or do any other action after being hit. Like a lot of older legacy fighting games that still hold up today and are talked about all the time, there's beauty in simplicity. Smash 64's absolutely ludicrous amounts of hit stun is exactly why it's known for having so many zero to death combos, which means that after I attack, I know that my opponent is going to be stunned long enough for me to be creative with my next move. Combined with Smash 64's pacing and how all the stocks and matches flow together, the overall experience of high-level 64 is a little bit easier to follow and it's not as chaotic. It still has tech skill, it's still input heavy, there's still strategy, but it is much easier to follow along even as a spectator. And finally, to top it off, 64's risk-reward structure. With the combination of Smash 64's pacing and the ridiculous amounts of hit stun, it makes Smash 64's neutral game very similar to that of a classic 2D fighter.
Some might even call it footsies.
You can call it whatever you want. Positioning, spacing, footsies, whatever. These players know that if they advance with the proper move and if they block certain things at certain times, if they get one correct hit in, that might be the game. One stray hit could lead to a full combo.
Wario was baiting him into that. Oh, and this is a big combo from Wario. And an edge hoggle to do it.
One stray hit could lead to eating a whole bar of super.
Wants that SPD.
Oh, all right.
This is pretty big.
The overall package of Smash 64 as a competitive game, at least to me, resembles a lot of classic fighting games.
Yes, there are combos in Smash 4. Yes, there are combos in Ultimate. However, they have a lot of asterisks next to them. There's a smaller range of percentages that your opponent has to be at to pull off certain combos. One example from newer Smash Brothers that's really common nowadays but is totally missing in 64 is air dodging. Since there's no air dodging, coming back to the ledge makes it a little bit more challenging since you have to rely more on approaching with an attack, weaving through different attacks, and dodging rather than just hitting an air dodge. It's definitely a unique edge guarding situation compared to most other Smash Brothers games.
So again, beauty and simplicity, sometimes less, really is more.
I've spent plenty of hours with newer Smash titles.
His main game is actually Smash 64. He was at SmashCon, and there's no air dodge in Smash 64. This counter pick makes. Oh yeah, I'll change it. This counter pick makes sense, as he is a Smash 64 player.
Yep, gonna play a stage he's used to. And now we can understand why he plays Falcon. Go ahead and go up and hit him.
I really hope he doesn't try to Falcon Punch to stall his recovery. That's the 64 thing. Oh no!
Oh my gosh!
God. Raptor boost. That isn't even in 64.
It's not even safe.
What?
That's not even safe.
He raptor
Couldn't succeed at what I'm doing.
If you put Captain Falcon in a video game, it's guaranteed that I own a copy. But they've all just been lacking that same structure that the first two have. Considering my heart lives with 2D or traditional fighting games, that combo confidence is what makes Smash 64 appeal to me the most. And yeah, Melee does have some pretty similar combo structure. I've played my fair share of Melee.
Really? Get the fuck out of here.
Like I said, it's a great game, but even then, Melee is lacking some of those other traits that I mentioned, like the art style, on top of just being a totally different beast in terms of speed and tech skill, which could still be a lot of fun, but for some, it is a little bit more overwhelming than 64.
To put it in that traditional fighting game perspective, playing Melee is kind of like playing Third Strike and doing Ken's strong, fierce DP, except if every hit required you to put in a Raging Demon. Smash 64 has plenty of combos, strategy, tech skill. It just happens to be at a more viewer-friendly pace.
It's just like Melee, but it lets you smell the flowers a little bit more before Falcon's bulging chin muscles pile drives you into the abyss.
Yes, let's go. My chin is a foot.
But let's get back to it here. Why is Smash Remix so important to 64? As a whole, Smash 64 is fortunate that it's possible to do pretty dang well in a tournament setting with just about any character. Yeah, except for maybe one or two.
Or one.
But at the very tippy top tier, it's kind of the usual. If you're watching a Smash 64 top 8 bracket, you're gonna see Captain Falcon, Kirby, and Pikachu. Probably in that order. Maybe Yoshi if like Prince or Wizrobe is playing, but that's it. Don't worry about that one actually. Don't look at that, just those three. I love playing Sean, Hugo, Necro, whatever, but without fail, Co-op Cup Finals, oop, there it is, Ken, Yun, Chun-Li. Crazy how that happens. I still love Third Strike though, don't take it back. Personally, I like smaller rosters in fighting games, since it usually means more focused research has been done on each individual character. And more importantly, more time's been dedicated to looking at things like movement tech and engine specifics and interactions as a whole. However, for a long-running game with kind of a stagnant top 8, it's kinda cool to imagine that the tier list could get a much needed shakeup after all these years. The nice thing is, none of the base characters have even been changed. But for the brand new characters, there's so much work that's been done here. Whether it's certain attacks, intros, or just general aesthetics, they all try to be extremely faithful to how they would have looked if they were added into the original base game. They're also balanced around the rest of the cast. Dark Samus does have some moves similar to regular Samuel, sure, but their neutral air, forward air, and lots of her smash attacks? I mean, there's way more going on here than just being a clone character. Ganon has a lot in common with the Melee rendition of his character, but they gave him the freaking spear. They gave him the spear from Ocarina. Young Link even has the hook shot, specifically from Majora's Mask. Wario, my favorite edition so far, has way more focus put on the Wario Land series of games. He even has a tackle, and his intro is the plane crash from Wario Land 3. Oh, and by the way, they all have their own break the targets, and they all work in adventure mode. That's nuts. The level of dedication and craftsmanship goes way farther than a ROM hack. If you would have handed this to 5-year-old me, I would have thought this was Smash 64 2, the second attack, it's that good. And secondly, probably the thing that I'm the most pumped for, the stages. We're pretty lucky as Street Fighter players that we don't really have to worry about which background needs to be picked for every match.
I have to hear Chun-Li's theme one more goddamn time.
Snap! Back when I got into 64, we had Hyrule and Dreamland, and I played Falcon, so I lived in the 10th. And you know, a lot of people didn't like that very much. Hey, what if we didn't play on Hyrule? You know, that tornado's kind of eh. And the 10th's kind of eh, you know. What if we just played on Dreamland? I think we can all play on one stage. One stage is fine. Let's just do Dreamland. Just Dreamland. So that means that over the course of a top 8, if each match happens to go to Game 5, you'll have to see and hear Dreamland a total of 40 times. God forbid you need a tiebreaker, and God forbid any weird rules get broken and you gotta replay a match or something. Oh, yeah, also, 64, no timer in the base game. No, none of that, no timer. And, you know, since 64 is known for being Zero to Death City, the cheese is set.
14% on him. Not a huge lead, but
No.
definitely one where Shocky could very easily
Close doors.
kind of hold his ground, not try and force any hard scenarios, just kind of put out those hitboxes. And unfortunately, Kirby being a slow character on the ground and in the air, like slower than like your super quick characters.
So now, imagine how we used to have to play this game before we modded timers in. In all fairness though, after you do add the timer, this really is some great neutral. Considering each player honestly is just one touch away from losing a whole stock, you can kind of start to appreciate the movement a lot more. But again, in order to have a timer in vanilla, you still need some kind of cheating device or a modified cartridge or etc, etc. Smash Remix, 8-minute timer by default. Over 30 stages, hazards optional. And not all of those are for competitive, okay, but if you do put it on tournament settings, there are still a lot more stages than just Dreamland. You don't like the tornado on Hyrule? Awesome, gotta take that out of there, done. Don't wanna get blasted on Corneria? You don't have to anymore. Just wanna be a weeaboo? Hey, we got you on that. Don't even worry about it. And you know, if you just want some fun Battlefield-esque renditions, they're here too. This was my biggest problem even playing the game casually with some friends. I love the whole cast of characters in the base game. Every single character, yes, even Samus, is a blast to play. But man, do some of these stages get a little boring. It is such a relief to be able to play 64, hit random on the stage select, and be pretty damn confident that I'm gonna get put on a good stage like 8 out of 10 times. There's definitely some fun, like gimmicky stages in here too, and those are fun in their own way. But stage variety has always been my personal biggest gripe with Smash 64. And even after all that, this thing works on a real console. Get a real copy of Smash 64, convert the ROM, throw that thing on an EverDrive, and as long as you've got an expansion pack, you are golden right now. You really can't ask for any more than that, which, looking at the character select, you're gonna get more at some point whether you like it or not. But listen, I'll talk up and down about how much this hack means to me and how much fun this is compared to when I used to play, but that's kinda all I can do. Talk about what it was like when I used to play. I haven't been active in Smash 64 or, you know, competitive Smash in general for a very, very long time. So I thought maybe it'd be fun to hear a little bit from someone more involved. I can't really invite him over in person to the arcade, but look, we'll make do with what we got. So lately, Kara Karopi's been on a bit of a net play grind, and I snagged a little time with him to talk some Smash. For us arcade people that might not be too up to date on Smash, let alone 64, Karo's a long-time competitive player, stretching back to taking second at SmashCon 2015, all the way to now with a 5th place spot at SmashCon 2019. Altogether, only ever placing outside of a top 8 less than 4 times in his 64 career.
Dude, I'm glad you said that, because I was looking at my record and I was like, yo, I've only placed worse than 5th like 3 times in like 7 years or something crazy like that.
Hey, respect where respect is due. Just means there's more knowledge to pass down the line to new 64 players. You know, speaking of which, how exactly did you find 64?
So I started playing Smash 64 just casually. Of course, everybody thinks they're the best player in the world. And then I discovered this website called Smashboards, which was just like filled with people that were way better than me. So I found the best guy. I called him out, who at the time was Isaiah. I got stumped. And then most people get discouraged, but I loved the game. And if I knew that if I wasn't the best, that I'd want to be the best. So I just started going to tournaments, and I've gotten pretty good since then.
But you know, 64 isn't your only game. In fact, back in the day, you used to say that you would take inspiration from high-level Melee and apply some of those techniques to 64. You even retired from 64 for a whopping handful of months,
just to come back in the same year.
So when I technically quit 64, I've had one singular goal since I started, and it was to be the best player in the world. And when I technically quit 64, I was at college. So I went to school in the middle of nowhere, and after the first year and the second year and the third year, I really just couldn't play the game. Couldn't play online because I was living with roommates. There weren't tournaments. It would be a 6-hour drive to the nearest tournament. I just felt like I wasn't getting better, and I felt really discouraged. And I think that I looked at Melee as a way to maybe kind of escape that feeling, because there was a Melee scene on my campus. I would still be able to learn from them. So I think that's maybe why I got into it. I do love the game though. Even to this day, I still play it. I still watch the high level players and, like you said, try to get inspiration from there. I still love Melee, but I think my heart will always lie with 64. I don't think that I'm ever going to stop playing this game until I'm the best.
And I want to hear about more 64, but you've played Remix, right?
Oh, dude, I love Smash Remix. I'm such a Smash Remix fan.
So tell me, I haven't entered a 64 tournament in a hot minute, but even I can see some major potential for some improvements to competitive 64. What are some of the most important benefits that Remix can bring to the table?
Yeah, so that's the thing. Remix only benefits 64. You just said it perfectly. It literally only benefits 64 because they don't take anything out. We have Smash 64 vanilla in Remix, and they just give you so much more. There's new characters, there's new stages, and something that's super sick that nobody even really talks about, they give you a bunch of the training features that traditional Smash 64 doesn't have. So if you're familiar with Melee, they have 20XX, and they have all these cool training things. Smash Remix has all of that. There's just so many little things. I believe that at this point, there is no reason to ever load up Vanilla 64, because if you want to play Vanilla 64, you still can do that in Remix. Even if you don't like Remix, you hate the Remix characters, you hate the Remix stages, it's still advantageous to play Smash Remix because it offers more training exercises.
It would definitely be a pretty massive undertaking to get every 64 player to drop the game and switch to Remix though. Considering Smash 64's meta has been set in stone like so many classic legacy fighting games, how much would Remix affect the tournament landscape as it is now?
That's a big question, right? So if Remix was ever going to appear in the tournament scene, I believe that it would have to be a full shift. I don't envision a scenario where you have a Smash Con that's okay, we're gonna play Smash 64, but by the way, you guys can play Falco now. Or maybe you can play on these other stages, but you can't play the Remix characters. I can't envision that, and I actually don't even think that would be very healthy. I think that is a pretty gray area. If it does become the tournament edition of Super Smash Bros. 64, that would be a massively different scene and outcome. And of course, it would affect the tier list. The whole meta would completely shift. Even the tier list of players, who's a top player, who's not, but it's not officially legal tournaments. There's Smash Remix tournaments on NetPlay. There's certain 64 exclusive tournaments that run Remix as side event, but we've never had a Smash Remix major yet.
So there's definitely a lot to look forward to for both old and new players. However, it's not like Smash 64 is sold in regular stores right now. Most people are going to get into this game from watching events and other things online, which even for games like Melee or some other classic fighting games can be a little bit confusing to the first-time spectator. Is there anything in 64 that might be hard to understand from a spectator's point of view? Some kind of barrier of entry for just checking out some matches?
That's one of the better things about 64 is that you don't need to spend hours in training mode to understand, because it is such a neutral-based game. If you look at it, honestly, as more of a traditional fighting game and not a Super Smash Bros. Game, it makes more sense. I think in some of the newer Smash games, if we look at Melee, it's extremely technical, it's extremely fast, extremely in your face, and you don't really see it in any other fighting games. But sometimes the viewers, they're not following along. It's hype for the sake of being hype, and that's the beauty of Melee. It's viewer-friendly in that way. 64 is viewer-friendly in another type of way because the high-level play is not so flashy. You really have to look at it from a traditional fighter stance where you're looking at players making the most of certain advantageous positions. And of course it exists in other Smash games, I'm not saying that at all, but I think when you watch some of the other Smash games, that's not the first thing that jumps out to you. But I think when you watch 64, it is the first thing that jumps out to you.
So I'm not sure how much you know about Third Strike, but it's kind of in that same boat of having a meta and a tier list that's been rock solid for well over a decade. If not double that now. With Remix being a Romhack, you're kind of entering an era of taking a classic fighter and moving it into the modern world of always updating and potentially getting constant balance changes. How is that going to affect the game competitively?
The beauty of Smash Remix is that it can be both. Smash Remix is simultaneously a new game where it updates characters, but you still have the legacy factor of 64. And the single best thing about Smash Remix is that they make 0 changes to the original 12 characters, and they make 0 changes to Dreamland. So for those original Smash 64 lovers, you have the game that you grew up with, But for those new players that want to experience patches and they want to see new characters and new stages, you have that too. And it feels like both parts of the scene are kind of like coexisting in this like new beautiful Smash Remix scene.
So not quite a Project M overhaul, but more like major free DLC. Good stuff. But that's still a lot to brush up on to get competitive. You know, lucky for me, I know some of your old practice routines from back in the day, but we're here to educate the next generation of Smash 64. So tell me, when you used to sit down in training mode, which of those Taylor Swift tracks you used to listen to helps you keep that good focus? Fearless or Blank Space?
For sure, Blank Space.
See, now that is the theme of a champion. But, you know, getting back to 64, for a lot of people already into Smash, there's a good chance that they might already have some experience in Melee or in Ultimate, considering those are Smash's largest competitive titles at the moment. Since you've spent some time in both, if I were coming from one of these two other Smash games, what might I like about Smash 64?
With less character-specific tech, I think an extremely smooth engine. It's a very player-friendly game for a beginner. I mean, of course I'm biased, but when I watch Melee, not so much now, but when I started watching Melee, there were so many things where I was like, I don't know what just happened, but I know that, you know, Mango is beating H-Box, and I could see it happening, but I couldn't really follow the movements. And in Ultimate, you see MKLeo going these ridiculous runs, and I can see that he's winning, and I can see that he's comboing, and I can follow his reads and his pressure. But I don't understand the nuances of his character, but I think it's really clearly seen in 64. We have less character-specific tech, I think. And that's the reason that most 64 players, everyone plays like 6, 7, 8 characters, because all the characters, you can easily translate between them. But that's not to say that 64 is not technical. I think 64 is extremely underratedly technical. In fact, if you like look at all the techniques in 64 and all the techniques in Melee, other than wave dashing, we pretty much have the Melee engine.
So a good range of easily accessible tech and a neutral game that can be hard to execute but easy to follow and understand. You know, speaking of characters, while most players will stick to their guns in singles with 2, maybe 3 main characters at best, it's not uncommon to see the entire roster played competitively in the doubles format. No joke, not friendly doubles, but actual competitive doubles, where you can see the real usefulness of not so commonly picked characters.
Yeah, you do. Doubles is a meta that's very actively evolving because there are certain rule sets. There's like tournaments where Pikachu is banned and then Pikachu and Kirby is banned, and there's like these new stages now. That's a very actively evolving scene.
That kind of sounds like a lot of work to keep up with, though. I wouldn't really blame you if you decided to take another break from Smash, so, you know, if this doesn't really work out, you think you'd be up for taking a sponsor to play 2048?
2048? I forgot about that game, dude. I was dirty at that game. Oh my, I'm low-key filthy at 2048. You know what other game I was really, really good at? There was this one Dragon Ball Z game. I was like 9 years old, but I remember there was leaderboards, so you could objectively see who was good. I was like objectively a top 3 player in the world at this Dragon Ball Z game when I was a kid. Anyway, I really can't see myself never playing Smash again. I think the only scenario where that happens, I actually have a fear that like one day I'm gonna get into a car accident and not be able to use my hands. Like I'm afraid that like I'm just gonna lose functionality in my hands before accomplishing my goal. So that actually really scares me. But unless I like die or my hands fall off, I'm always going to play this game.
Actually, I don't know if that would be much of a problem. Smash 64 is kind of well known for having a lot of players using crazy controllers on real consoles at a super high level. LD with his Xbox 360 controller, multiple people playing with PC keyboards on a real system. With how many adapters and options that have come out over the years, Smash 64 could actually be considered one of the most entry-friendly fighting games in terms of controller accessibility.
I never even really considered that, but I guess that's actually true. There are so many different controller options, and I actually think that's something really unique to 64. You look at like Melee, they were pretty much always GameCube controller, and then hacks started using the box and all this stuff. But for like the last 10 years, you could play an N64 controller on 64, you can play a HoriPad, a GameCube controller, a keyboard. There's that famous video of a Smash 64 player playing on a fishing pole. There's so many different controller options in 64, and they're all legal, which is really cool.
And you know, even if your preference really is just the tried and true OG 64 controller, we're kind of living in this golden age of easily replaceable quality parts like the steel sticks. You can actually be confident that your one favorite lucky controller can last your entire competitive career if you really want it to.
Dude, for sure. I remember when the steel stick started coming out, I thought it was too good to be true. But you talk to these people who have a steel stick and they're like, nah, like I got one 2-3 years ago and I've been using it ever since, which is so different than the original N64 controller. You're like, oh, I've got an N64 controller in my house. It sucks. It definitely sucks, and you're absolutely correct. Do not feel like you're limited to that bad joystick. Getting new new N64 controllers, or at least different options, is so accessible. I mean, I've been using my current N64 Hori pad for like 2.5 years, which is crazy. You would never be able to do that on a normal N64 controller.
With a lot of these old fighting games, I find that one of the most important things that you can do is to push your efforts towards bringing in as much new blood as you can, new players. It's really the only way to keep the game alive far into the future. So for others, players may be looking to become community leaders for their area's Smash 64 scene, or maybe people looking to start a new scene altogether. Would it be better to push vanilla 64 to start and appreciate the intricacies in the base game, or should you just start a fresh scene with Smash Remix?
Dude, I'm telling you right now, there's never a reason to buy Super Smash Bros. Again.
Hold on. Small disclaimer before we keep going. So, I'm all about retro games and arcade stuff. I'm all for making games more easily accessible and doing what we can to make arcade PCBs that cost thousands of dollars more accessible to the home enthusiast and tournament organizer. But I'm also no lawyer. It's not really my place to speak on the legality of the quote-unquote right way to play these games. The point here is about how much Remix could benefit the competitive scene, so that's none of my business. Keep this in mind as we keep going. If you love Smash 64 and you end up loving Remix, you should probably consider owning a real legit copy of 64.
Buy an EverDrive, download Remix, and put Remix on the EverDrive. If you run into someone who's like, I just want to play vanilla Smash, by all means, you have that option. But there's literally no downside to not loading up Remix and having Remix available. I love Remix. I play more of the Remix characters than the vanilla characters. I'm obviously not as good with them yet, but without ever turning off the console, if I want to do try-hard picadillos for 2 hours, it's just I pick a different character and I go to Dreamland. It's amazing. I really cannot stress enough that I don't even think people should play the original Super Smash Bros. Anymore. They should only play Remix, because Remix is Super Smash Bros. And so much more.
As far as getting that new blood goes, a little exposure can sometimes go a long way. If I'm remembering this right, would you still want Drake or even maybe Mark Wahlberg to talk about Smash 64?
Wait, have I said that before? Because I thought that before.
Yeah, you might have said that once or twice, yeah?
Dude, I remember being like 18 and thinking all it would take. I mean, you saw it with like Drake and Travis Scott and Fortnite, and like Ninja blew up and all these things. All it would take would be for like one famous person to just like tweet out the game and it would blow up. And I'm sure there are famous people who play 64. There's got to be. Everyone loves it. I mean, even the people who don't play it competitively, if you ever talk to someone, they're like, oh, Smash 64, I played that game when I was a kid. Like, that game's sick. So there's got to be so many famous people that play this game. I can't even imagine what that would do for our scene if one of those people started playing competitively.
So what would have been the pro play here? Would it have been better for us to have Smash talked about in TED or in Max Payne?
Oh my god. My favorite is the one from the other guys. It's Mark Wahlberg and Will Ferrell. It's so funny.
And if we're talking about how competitively accessible Smash 64 is, one of my absolute favorite things about the game nowadays, you can actually compete in the game without ever actually fighting another player. Smash 64's combo contest has really blown up in popularity over the years, and really highlights just how creative you can be within the game and how much the engine lets you express yourself through combos.
Nobody really realized how big the combo contest would get, and it's something that people are starting to talk about. So I commentate a lot of the combo contests, and I was just like, yo, this is crazy. And I was saying, like, what a weird kind of like beautiful accident that all this came together, and now we have like this huge side event. Realistically, the combo contest itself is probably even a bigger event than Smash 64 singles. Undoubtedly, it's a bigger event, and it's so unique to 64. There's really nothing like it in any other Smash game. I can't speak for other fighting games, but I never heard anything about it. The reason that I like Smash 64 is because you can watch it and appreciate the like mind games that are happening, right? Smash combo contest is viewer friendly for the complete opposite reason. You could literally never played a video game in your life, and you could show up to the Smash combo contest and completely follow what's going on. So we really have like two completely opposite sides of the spectrum, and I think both are just incredible.
So long as you have a little imagination in the execution, you can quite literally enter into a major next to top players like Prince and come out on top without ever stepping foot into the two-player mode of a fighting game. For people who have really bad tournament anxiety or are maybe looking into getting into a competitive game, but ironically enough, have their own personal issues with the competitive mindset, Smash 64 offers quite literally a game-changing new form of competition.
That's the weirdest part. So there was a Smash Remix combo contest. It was like one of those big events that happened during quarantine because nobody can leave their house, and Prince competed in this. This wasn't like some random side event. Like all these like big name dudes competed in this. It was Prince in the finals versus a guy that I have never in my life heard of. And the guy that I've never in my life heard of beat Prince in this combo contest, which is insane. That will not happen in other fighting games. You don't hear about the best player at a specific event losing to a random. Very, very rarely. It's like pretty much unheard of, and it can happen in a combo contest, because if you just sit in your basement and just like lab combos for a few months, you don't really need to be a competitive player, like you said. You can just be some guy who's really creative and really good at combos and then win these big events.
Let's talk about some brass tacks real quick. If I want to get into Remix, but I don't even have a 64 to start with, getting an EverDrive alone is kind of a financial investment. The struggle for quality emulation in Third Strike has been going on for literal decades, let alone other classic fighters. What exactly can you tell me about your experiences using emulators versus playing Remix on real hardware?
You can feel the difference. I felt the difference and I did not like it. So I am Team CRT. However, the difference was not great, meaning that I think for the vast majority of players, they would not feel the difference. And I'm not trying to say like, oh, look at me, like I'm like super good at the game, I can feel the difference. The difference is so small, you'll never notice the difference. I am never going to support offline emulators for like these big like national or super major tournaments though. For accessibility, then I would fully support that. I don't know exactly how it works in Melee. I'm just going to draw the obvious comparison here. Axe's nightclub is completely offline monitor. They're thriving. I think it's like the biggest local scene in the world right now. I think for accessibility, it's incredible. Yeah, so I would fully support that for sure.
And on that note, clearly this isn't something officially put out by Nintendo. I'd be pretty confident in saying that the Smash 64 community would live on without any kind of direct support from Nintendo, but considering this is a ROM hack after all, is there any concern over being pulled from events or getting tossed under the rug in a Project M type situation?
So it's a risky play, right? There's no easy answer there, and I think right now what's happening in the community is we're kind of split down the middle. Here are the two arguments. You can have a completely grassroots scene, because Nintendo is never going to care about us anyway, and even when we go to these big majors, naturally so, 64 gets significantly less entrants than the other games. The other argument is, in order for us to survive, we can't just pretend like we're not related to like Melee or Smash Ultimate. Like that would be foolish. So let's all coexist as one larger Super Smash Bros. Community. And then if we get less stream time or fewer setups at some of these big name multi-majors, then it's worth it, because, you know, we were streamed on BG Bootcamp, or we were streamed on X, Y, or Z, you know, Twitch platform. So it was worth it in that regard. Frankly, I've always been Team Nintendo, not because they'll ever give us money, like that's literally never going to happen, but they'll support tournaments, and tournaments will support us. But I don't really know what the future of Smash 64 looks like. If 5 years from now you told me that Remix was dead, completely banned, no one played it, I would not be surprised. If 5 years from now you told me that no one ever played the original Super Smash Bros. And it was only Remix, I also would not be surprised.
And not to start sicking Nintendo ninjas on you guys, but competitive Smash Brothers absolutely requires an 8-minute timer. Smash 64, by default, doesn't have any options for timers in multiplayer. From the get-go, if you want to play vanilla 64 in a competitive format, you already have to modify the game in some way just to have the absolute basic essentials. You quite literally cannot avoid using a modified version of the game as it stands in any kind of well-respected, high-profile tournament setting, since it is by default missing such a necessity of competitive Smash.
Yeah, dude, I don't even know where this conversation happened, if it actually happened, but I remember, I think it was Genesis 4 or Genesis 3. I was sitting on the top 8 stage. Someone came up to me and they go, yo, Kira, just so you know, like the timer's approved, we're gonna roll with the timer, but don't pick Blue Falcon. And that's what they said to me, because I guess in that version of 19XX, Nintendo had like approved the timer, but they did not approve alternate costumes for the characters. Again, I don't know if that conversation even ever happened, or maybe they were hoping Nintendo wouldn't notice that they put the timer. I have no idea. But I remember someone clearly telling me I couldn't use a different color. But then like 2 years later, they stopped caring about that. So like you can enter like SmashCon and play Blue Falcon or Green Kirby. So I don't even know where we draw the line. I don't think anyone really knows what they're talking about when it comes to Nintendo and what they will and will not allow.
The truest combo in Smash is always Nintendo into knee-jerk decisions, but before I forget, I wanted a little lore here. Back in August of 2014, you made a statement saying that you were guaranteed a top 8 spot at Apex of 2015. Do you remember what place you got?
Yeah, I got 5th place.
5th place, right next to LD. But what I really want to know is, back in the day, you donated to get Faye flown out from the Netherlands, adding on to 64's already extremely impressive international player count that the game typically receives, the only condition of that being Cobra would have to do the chicken dance on stream. And I couldn't find any evidence of that happening. I gotta know, did the dance happen?
Cobra and then Chicken Dance. I forgot all about these things, man. You're bringing back memories. No, what I'm upset about is at the time, Apex was the tournament. Like now that seems crazy. Apex is like not even a tournament anymore. Apex was the tournament, and my goal, part of being the best player in the world, was winning Apex at the time. And I never got to win an Apex because the tournament series died out. Dude, I'm especially annoyed that I think that there's a really high likelihood that Super Smash Con doesn't happen this year. And I think that I thought that I was going to win Super Smash Con this year. I think all the what's the expression? Like all the cards were, I don't know.
The stars were aligned.
Yes, that's the expression. All the stars were aligned. I'm just more disciplined as a person. And now that I'm older, I'm a little bit more mature, and I think I have a better mindset about the game. Everything was exactly how I needed to be. And all the other top players, I was starting to play better against like those top 3, top 4 type players in the world. I was starting to do better versus them than I ever have before.
Well, since it kind of gives me a chance to talk about it, even if some majors were to stay open this year, there's probably a really high likelihood that international travel just wouldn't be able to happen like it has in the past. It's sadly not a very often talked about thing, but the international presence of 64 is pretty incredible. It'd even be worth holding a 64 major if top level play was limited to only players within that tournament's part of the world?
No, definitely not. I mean, at that point, what's different than winning like a regional, right? Like the thing that's crazy about Smash 64 is that I think the 3 best players on the planet right now come from 3 different countries. None of those countries are the United States. So having a Smash Con without Canada, without Peru, without Japan, it's not a Smash Con. In order for a Super Smash Bros. 64 tournament to be a super major in my eyes, you need Canada, you need Peru, you need Japan, you obviously need the US, and you need Mexico.
Even with Smash 64's similarities to other classic, quote-unquote, traditional fighting games, a good portion of Smash's community, even competitively, is younger audiences. If my memory serves me, I do remember hearing about some legends of some homemade pork chops and pierogies with zucchini, some kind of spiritual support you used to have back in the day. Does that ring any bells?
My mom is extremely supportive, dude. My parents are, it's like yin and yang, bro. Dude, I haven't had my mom's cooking so long, I don't even know, it's kind of sad. My mom, so supportive. She'll call me, ask how I'm doing before an event. She'll watch Top 8 Live. She is the most supportive mom. My dad still doesn't know what this game is called. He'll call me and he'll say like, stop playing that Pokemon game. Because I guess I main Pikachu, so he just thinks it's Pokemon. And it was great that my little brother is filthy at the game as well. So between my little brother and my best friend all playing Smash, it was nice to have support in that regard.
And about your brother, actually, you were technically part of a Smash crew back in the day with some other notable players. Stranded, Malachi, Skyfire, yourself. What was that like? And do you think that helped you improve early on?
2 things. One, my friends and like my cousin who's Malachi and Tommy who's Stranded, they all, being able to play with people whenever I wanted, other than like that brief time in college, was incredible. I think aside from that, the reason I'm so consistent though is because I've probably had more hours in this game than any other person in the world. I think I've probably played more than literally every other person on the planet. And I think it's just because I have an absurd amount of hours at this game, both versus like computers and training mode and my friends and family. We were literally either best friends or blood. So it wasn't like an online crew where it's like, we kind of have similar play styles, or I play Fox and you play Fox, let's join the same crew. Like they were my best friends that I would die for, and they were like literally family. So I think I was bonded to them more in that way than the actual crew itself.
So getting back to supporting local scenes and getting into the game, considering Remix is in what you could argue is a tough spot in terms of what all is required just to play the game, what in your opinion is the best way for interested players to jump into Remix? And would you have any advice or resources for people who are considering going to their first 64 tournament, Remix or otherwise?
So 2 things, getting into the game and then like getting into the game at a local level. First things first, getting into the game. For anybody listening, you obviously wouldn't know this, but I know Judy, you do. I just bought a computer and set it up in the last 48 hours. I did not have this computer that I'm using right now literally 2 days ago. And I've always had a fear of setting up NetPlay because historically I've always been a console player. Dude, I set up NetPlay last night. It took me 15 minutes tops, literally 15 minutes to put Smash 64 on my computer and be able to play it. Even if you don't have a console, just buy a controller online, plug the controller into like this adapter that's like literally $15, and then it takes 15 minutes to download. So super easy. I don't think that we talk enough about as a community how easy it is to get this game on a computer. As far as resources, join like the social media groups. join like the Facebook page, join Discord, just ask around. As far as advice for a first tournament. So here's the thing. I feel silly saying this because you think this is common sense, but so many people don't have this mentality. If you're going to join a 64 tournament, you have to know that you're going to get trashed. Like you're just going to get destroyed, beat down. You're going to get double 4-stock O2. That's just the fact. And it's not a Smash 64 thing. You're joining a community of people that have spent a great portion of their lives playing or doing an activity. Like you would never show up to a chess tournament, lose, and then be like, oh, I'm never playing chess again. But for some reason in fighting games, it's like a really popular mindset that you show up to a fighting game tournament, you get destroyed, and then you never show up again. I don't understand it. I think that maybe in fighting games in particular, just the nature of the game, people like kind of like put their heart on the line and they like identify with their character, and it's not the character fighting it. It's really like an extension of you fighting this other player. So it can feel like demoralizing to lose, but you really just got to get above that mindset. I mean, especially these older games like Smash 64, there's people that have been playing this game for 20 years. The great thing about Smash 64 is if you put in the work, I actually think it's a pretty easy game to get good at. So you have to have a growth mindset.
No, I mean that happens in Street Fighter all the time, especially in games like Third Strike, where if you're playing a really strong player and you get cooked, you get real cooked, and you know it. But the thing is, yeah, they're using 2 decades worth of experience against you, sure, but that's also 20 years worth of knowledge that you can absorb over time.
Yeah, dude, that's such an important point. And that's the mindset that you have to go into. When you go into a tournament and you get double 4-stocked, you've got to look at it not as, wow, this person just picked apart my brain. And you really got to look at it as like, wow, this other player is using 20 years of knowledge. And it took 20 years of the meta to get to that point. It doesn't take 20 years to learn. You skip so many phases of the meta when you enter a scene. I mean, you're seeing it right now with Zane in Melee. Zane on a specific day could be the best player in the world, right? He's won these big tournaments, but he's only been playing for like a fifth of the time as the other players because he didn't need to learn 18 years of Melee meta. He only needed to learn the most modern meta. And it's the same thing in 64. You can show up to 64, you don't need to learn 20 years. You can learn 3 years, 4 years, and it'll be enough. And honestly, it doesn't even take 3-4 years to learn it, but you only need to know the meta that exists from like 2016 and onward.
So we're getting near the end here. Help me out with just a couple more resources. You don't have to go super in-depth on this one, but for at least the vanilla 64 roster, give me one player that I should be watching for each character.
Isaiah, you could watch any of these characters, but keep in mind, these are not the best players of these characters. I think they most embody the character. For Pikachu, watch me. For Falcon, watch Super Boom. For Yoshi is the most diverse character in the game. I'll give you both ends of the spectrum. Watch Wizzy on one end of the spectrum if you're like a patient, methodical player, and watch Kuraba on the other end if you're just like a total maniac. For Kirby, watch Fukuru. For Fox, again, 2 ends of the spectrum. LD on one end, Stranded on the other end. For Jigglypuff, Wingera. For Donkey Kong, Tacos. For Link, you should watch, I don't know how to pronounce this. I think it's Sakurai. For Ness, you should watch Frey, but I don't know if he has a lot of footage. So watch Raichu for footage, but I think Frey's probably a little bit better. For Luigi, Frian, Hydra is the best Mario player. Samus, easily Josuke. I'm gonna go on a quick like 15-second rant here for a second. People often say it's the most balanced Smash game. You do see a lot of like Pika, Yoshi, Falcon, Kirby at the top level, and I don't think that's to say it's not balanced. I think the reason you see those characters at the top level are because the players at this point who are playing at the top level are people who have been playing the game for like 8 years. And if you put 8 years into something, you want to do the best you can do. So those players play the character that's going to give them the best results. That's not to say though that the other characters are unviable. Japan again is like one of these big powerhouses for Super Smash Bros in the world, and their best player, who at the time their best player, who kind of like pioneered the whole scene, his name is Josuke. He plays Samus, who in our version is the worst character in the game. You had Isaiah, who at the time was the other arguable best player in the world, playing Pikachu. But for literally like 10 years, you had the best player in Japan, undoubtedly, arguably the best player on the planet, playing arguably the worst character in the game. Honestly, absolutely insane, which I still to this day think it's like the craziest thing ever.
We're kind of at the home stretch here. Any last minute things you want to talk about with 64 or for Smash Remix?
I think that the future of Smash 64 has never been more bright and promising than it is right now. When you look back to Smash 64, there are three main waves. Firstly, the game did not exist at a competitive level from 1999 to 2011. So I know we joked around like a 20-year meta. The 64 community started at Genesis 2 in 2011. And like Apex 2012 was even bigger. That's the first huge thing that happened to this game. Second huge thing was Genesis 3, where we had Wario versus Super Boom Fan in the grand finals, and we had the whole stadium packed out. That kind of led to another huge explosion in the game. And then the most recent explosion, and it's still mid-explosion right now, is the age of Smash Remix. I think that this is going to lead to so much growth in the game that it's not even funny. I think that we're at the beginning of this beautiful moment at 64 where we're going to look back and really credit Smash Remix to just changing this game in a way that nobody ever really thought was possible.
So hey, like I said, I'm sorry I couldn't invite you into the actual arcade with everything going on, but I appreciate you stopping by and chatting about Smash 64 and talking about some Remix with me.
Dude, it was my pleasure. I gotta say, this was very much not what I expected. And like I said, I'm happy to support in any way.
Oh, wait a minute, before I forget. Is Avatar The Last Airbender an anime?
Wait, what did he say?
Caro? Hello? Caro? Huh. I guess we lost him on that one. Oh well, you know, some questions just don't need answers. Well, either way, I think we got some really great info out there about Remix, and it should be pretty up-to-date for a while, and hopefully you guys decide to give Smash 64 a try sometime. Sorry, hang on, let me just, Wait. They updated it again? More region variants? More stages? More game modes? What? Lucas? What do you mean the most technical character in Smash 64 to date? You know, maybe you guys should just go play the game. Yeah, go play Remix. It's pretty dope. All right, yeah, that's it for me. I give up. Quit. I'm done. I give up. And hello again. Hope you guys dig the new look. My buddy Chris at VectorSpace on Twitter absolutely rocked on this project with me, so definitely, please, go check him out over there. And just as a quick note, I kind of had to shelf a few projects after things kind of started going nuts since, you know, it's kind of hard to film in your local arcade when it's, you know, closed. So I honestly have no clue if I'll be able to pick those back up. But I've already got more projects in the pipe anyway. I'll keel over before I stop running my mouth about fighting games and arcade tech, so I'll be going to the next project right away. And to Caro, thanks for letting me pick your brain a bit about your history with 64 and talking about Remix with me for a while. Super dope of you to help me out with this project. Smash 64 was actually a pretty big part of my life for a while, and while I do like to make this whole YouTube gig half jokey and half informative, my favorite parts are always when I get to record any kind of useful information, be it about getting people interested in trying a game competitively or, you know, even info about starting up a local scene. With how many great things Remix really does bring to the table, I can't wait to see what happens with Smash 64 in the future. And last but not least, I do have some lights to keep on here at Enemy Comin, so feel free to subscribe if you like what we do here and you want to keep up with the arcade. I hear leaving likes and putting up comments brings in a little bit more window traffic, something about an algorithm, so maybe check those out too if you want to show some support. You can find me on Twitter over at GDCade if you want to keep up with what I'm doing and be in the know on things that happen here, fighting game shenanigans, and other arcade projects I'm working on outside of the channel too. Speaking of which, I've kind of been holding off working on a few things until I was done talking about Remix, so if you want to check out some arcade tech with me, I'm going to be streaming some builds and repairs over on twitch.tv/GDCade. Feel free to follow me there if you want the notifications for when I go live, but I'll also be posting a little something here and a little something on Twitter as soon as the stream is up, so if you just want to subscribe here or follow me on Twitter, you'll know either way. We got some CPS2 boards to fix up, harnesses and cables to make to play some games, plus, you know, a full new super gun build to get to, so give me a follow over there if you want to see some cool arcade tech, or, you know, maybe if you just want to see me get electrocuted, because, I don't know, it might happen too. That kind of comes with the profession. Anyways, thanks for watching. Check out Smash 64, play some Remix, and for me, go support your local arcades. I've got some games to fix, so I'll see you in the next one.